Good evening, my name is Rachel Tucker and this is my presentation on my research proposal on the study on the efficacy of weighted vests. Just a brief introduction about how this study is really going to focus on sensory integration methods and their implementation within schools, and specifically weighted vests and the concept of deep pressure as an intervention for students with sensory processing disorders. Some key points to realize or to know for this research study is that the population is going to be regarded as, or is going to be referred to as children with sensory processing disorders. It's important to know proprioception and kinesthesia and what that means as the sense of body position and movement, and how deep pressure is recognized as an effective intervention for regulating and organizing sensory information, which in turn improves behavior, attention, and regulation. So my problem statement really focuses on the fact that many OTs, whether it be in a school, in early intervention, or outpatient, or wherever it may be, many OTs use weighted vests, and many OTs see positive outcomes with weighted vests. However, current research shows that there's actually not much evidence to prove that weighted vests do anything, which is a problem. So the purpose of this study is going to explore the effectiveness of weighted vests as a sensory integration intervention for students with sensory processing disorder within a school setting, as understood and observed by school-based occupational therapists. And it will guide and help develop an effective and standardized procedure for the use of a weighted vest as a sensory integration intervention. So there's a standard one that everyone uses as opposed to everyone making up their own. Some research questions I had were, how do pediatric OTs determine the correct body weight percentage for the use of a weighted vest on a student within the context of sensory integration? There's, some people say 5%, some people say 10%, but there's no set weight, and nobody really knows. What are the OTP's attitudes towards the utilization of weighted vests? Do they think it helps? Do they think it doesn't do anything? Is it a placebo effect? What are their thoughts? And like I said, again, what procedures are currently used for weighted vests for the OTs that do use it? Do they find one online? Do they make it up on their own? Do they move it and adapt it as it goes with each student? As I stated, the theoretical framework for this study is really going to be based off of Jane Eyre's sensory integration model, which really focuses on really takes a pragmatic worldview to determine if weighted vests influence the child's attention, regulation, and behavior within a school setting. Just thinking and considering the importance of an enriched sensory lifestyle for a kid, their entire life is mostly spent within a school setting. So making sure that the school setting is effective and beneficial for them in terms of their sensory needs is extremely important. The roles of the occupational therapist within a school is extremely important to know what they're working on, and whether, depending on whether it's the sensory framework or you're looking at handwriting. Sensory kind of goes into all of those things, because if a student is dysregulated sensory-wise, they're not going to be able to sit and work on handwriting. So it really all goes together. The significance of the study will be to improve the validity of weighted vests as evidence-based practice. It will improve and support the use of weighted vests as intervention methods in schools. It will help guide current protocols and standard procedures, and it will help guide further research on this topic. In terms of literature review, there was 4 articles that I reviewed, 3 out of the 4 articles were only included 10 or less participants within the sample size, which impacted the rigor of the study. The studies really focused on the before and after, and the results were very skewed, especially for the small sample sizes. And it wasn't, they weren't really able to generalize it to a greater population. The biggest study and the most important one was a group of 200 students where on-task participation was definitely observed and recorded. Most of all, these studies, when describing and communicating and discussing their limitations within the study, really helped guide what to include in this research study and other future research studies as important areas to keep an eye on and not let fall through the cracks. So in terms of methods, I chose a quantitative experimental design with intervention, post-tests, and 3 phases. So there's going to be 3 phases with it, including each student is going to participate in each phase, and it'll be go over the course of 3 weeks. Phase 1 will be no vest, and that'll be the baseline. Phase 2 will be intervention with the vest that has no weight, and then we'll do a withdrawal period, and we'll do a test after the withdrawal period, and then we'll do phase 3 will be intervention 2, which will be a weighted vest with 10% body weight, and then we'll also do a withdrawal period. The setting will be within the New Jersey public school system, and it'll be a natural school setting for each student. So the students will be within their own schools, with their own teachers, and with their own OTs, and everyone that they know. So they're not going to be caught off guard by a change in routine. Inclusion criteria include students with IEPs, students that score much more than others on the Sensory Profile 2 School Companion, and students that, based off of occupational therapists, clinical, professional reasoning, 50% or more of their school day routine is impacted by sensory processing difficulties. Exclusion criteria includes aggressive behaviors and unfamiliarity with weighted vests, just for the safety of the researchers and participants involved. Students will be recruited through their occupational therapists, who will be recruited through NJOTA, AOTA General Forum, some NJ School OT Facebook groups, LinkedIn, and general communication between school administrators. Data collection will be collected by school staff members. The data will be completed in forms of interval scales adapted from the Sensory Profile 2 School Companion, where high scores equate to high frequency of behaviors and low scores equate to low frequency of behaviors. And then there will be, like I said, 2 data collection points at time of right at the end of intervention, and then 30 minutes after intervention. I will use Microsoft Excel for data analysis of descriptive statistics, including age, gender, and diagnosis. And then I'll be using IBM SPSS for inferential statistics to complete a 2-way repeated measure analysis of variance, ANOVA, to determine if the data collection points are statistically significant between each other. And then it'll be represented on a scatter plot. Validity to keep in mind is student history, difficulties with change, mortality and study attrition, and data collection process. Staff members will be trained in the data collection process. And lastly, ethical considerations. Most importantly, student autonomy and respect of cultural differences. As a conclusion, many OTs use this method, and studies are largely inconclusive. With the articles reviewed and with the research study proposed, it will be determined whether or not weighted vests on students in a naturalistic school setting will lead to improved behavioral and sensory outcomes. Thank you all, and have a good night.